Hello everyone, I'm Morgan, and today I wanted to talk to you about 5 books I have read recently. So as always, I'm going to go from the one I like the least to the one I like the most. So let's get into it. So the first book, and the one I like the least, is The Companions, by someone. I will put it here as always. This book is an arc that I got from the galley by the publisher, so I'm really thankful for that. But it wasn't that great. This was a dystopian book where people can now upload their consciousness into a computer and they can then put it into a body and become companions. So they are accompanying people in their life, and people can rent it from this company. So basically, if you upload your consciousness, you are now owned by a company. And this concept is so interesting, and that's why I finished the book. Like, it wasn't horrible, but so in this book we follow a lot of different characters, which I do like, and the writing was okay. But the problem with this book is that it didn't feel like it was finished. It like had a good idea, and the characters were likable and developed a little bit, but not enough. There wasn't really an ending, and so when I got to the ending, I was just like, really? That's it? It's so short, and it shouldn't be. It should be way longer. It did make me think a bit of Station 11, and that's what they're selling it as. So at least there's something there. But actually the similarities between Station 11 and this are, for one, about the dystopian elements, but also one thing I forgot to say is that in this book, people for a long time weren't allowed to go out because there was in quarantine. There were people who unleashed this virus that killed a lot of people, and so for a long time people couldn't go out. And so the book actually follows characters through many years, and so we follow them before the quarantine and after the quarantine. And the thing is that this book just was trying to put too much together, and it should have focused, like Station 11, more on 1 year and not less characters, because that was okay, but just give us more of them. And so yeah, I was disappointed by this, but I will look forward to more books by this author because the concept was really cool. The second book I wanted to talk about is We Are the Weather by Jonathan Safran Foer. This one I listened to an audiobook, and it was read by the author, which was really nice. And basically this book, actually it has a bigger title, as you will see, but it is trying to tell you why eating animals is responsible for climate change, and that if we want to save the planet, we should stop eating animals, or at least a little bit. So in all of the book, he's trying to advocate for you to stop eating meat, at least at lunch and at breakfast. So like just at dinner you can still eat meat, but that is it, because the food that we feed animals makes them release methane into the atmosphere, and that's what's creating climate change. And so the less meat we eat, the less animals we will breed, and that way maybe we can stop, or at least reduce climate change. And I did think this was really interesting. It's just that this book kind of feels like part nonfiction, and so telling you about, as I said, eating less meat and why you should do it, and a lot of facts about that, which I did find really interesting. But there's also a big part that feels like a memoir and him just telling you about his life, which I personally really enjoyed because I'm really interested in this author. I actually wanted to read that book after I listened to an interview and a podcast with him. So, I really like this. I'm just saying that it's really marketed as pure nonfiction, like just giving you facts, and that's not all there is, so just be aware. But I did think this was really interesting. The third book I want to talk about is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This book obviously won the Man Booker Award, and I can totally understand why, because it felt really like reading a classic to be. So in this book we follow a lot of different women. Some are straight, some are lesbians, some are bi. You just have everything going on. Some are younger, some are older, and they all kind of bring the story together and they are linked in some way. The only thing that I think will be hard for most people with this book is the way it's written, because you don't actually have punctuation. So like through all of the book, it just goes back to the line. I don't know how to say that. Like you don't have commas or dots, you just go back every time. But after you get used to it, I think it really flows well. And I don't know, I really liked every single character in this book. I thought they were so well developed, and I was really interested in each of their stories. As I said, they all had multiple identities sexually, but they also had different political views, and it was just a book that show, I don't know, our society today, and I was just really interested in that. And so some parts that are set in the past and some that are set in today, kind of. It talked about Brexit a little bit, and I don't know, I was so interested. And so I didn't say that, but all the women that we follow are colored. So they're all black, I think, or almost. They all have some kind of color anyway, and some are really proud of their color, while some are trying to kind of erase it, like act like whites, and it showed, all the arrays of women, and it was just so interesting, and I loved it. It was great. Yeah, that's all I have to say, really. It's just a great book, and though honestly sometimes I did have a little problem to put everything together, like, because a lot of times we followed a lot of different characters, and sometimes I forgot their names. But honestly, this might totally be on me, because I was reading so many books at the same time, so I was not remembering. But besides that, really just a great book, and I'm so happy it won the Man Booker, and I hope so many people read it because it's great. And the last book I wanted to talk about is Middlegame by Seanan McGuire, and this is another new favorite. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it. This is urban fantasy, I will say, and though they said that this is adult, I will say I think it's new adult. So like it felt a little bit like YA, but not too much. So yeah, it's just a little thing that I will say. And so Middlegame is about two characters mostly, Roger and Dodger, who are twins, and they have had to grow up away from each other, but at, I don't know, 7 or 8, they find a way to communicate with each other in their heads, and they first think that maybe the other doesn't exist, and like it's an imaginary friend, but they soon discover that that's not true, and eventually they meet, and this book is about the people who made them. So we know from the beginning that there's a man called James Reed who created people, kind of, well, they're not completely human, but he's an alchemist, and apparently he has to create these beings so that they can take some kind of power, and so he creates 3 sets of twins that he separates because he has understood that they need to be separated to come to their full powers. And so we follow Roger and Dodger from the moment they are created, their birth kind of, to when they get older. And so they keep coming back together, and also they keep leaving each other. And so also the thing is, as they're originally supposed to be together, they kind of complete each other. So Dodger is the one who's called the math kid. He can do the most math you've ever seen. She is just so fast at at math, and she's just completely logical, and you know, she sees things in a particular way. While Roger's thing is words, he can learn most languages very fast and remember everything and just give word to any feeling ever. So they both complete each other, and I just completely fell in love with these characters. I loved the writing in this. It was very simple but beautiful, and I loved the story and where it went and how it was told, because, well, I don't want to say why, but at the beginning, so we kind of see the end of the story and then we go back to the beginning. It's kind of weird, but in the end it does make sense. And just at first you're kind of confused by the story, I will say, but it all comes together, and that's just so nice to see. And this book just took me on a ride, and I loved it. It was just so good, and I would highly recommend you check this out. Also, I'm really happy because the price of the hardback went down. When it first came out, it was like 33 euros, and now it's 17. So just saying, that's great. So I'm really happy to have a copy of this book now. And yeah, it was just so great. So yeah, that's all for me. Please tell me if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or what you have read recently, as I would love to know. But that's all for me. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon in another video. Goodbye! Dream I know, deep up my feelings for you.